Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and this is an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And Tristan smells like coconut. He's a pina colada in a Corgi suit. He had a bath yesterday at about 3 o'clock. Much to his surprise, when I asked him to come join me for a walk, there was a hose involved and a lot of suds, but he smells so much better, and I think he feels better. What do you think? Is it fun being stinky? I don't think so. You're not as snuggly when you're stinky. So I had to wash up his place in the office where he sleeps by the window, and he's all clean and fresh now and happy, except the cord here is freaking him out a little bit. So we are wrapping up today our list of things that you should put in your pet first aid kit. And today we're looking at kind of, equipment more than supplies. So one of the things that it's always handy to have in your pet first aid kit is rubber gloves. If you know anybody that works in any kind of a hospital setting, they can walk off with a few pairs for you maybe. You can buy boxes of them down at the CVS or any other drugstore, but it's hard to get just a few pairs. Sometimes if you take a CPR class live, they'll give you a couple of pairs there, and you really, you might use these for household things too. Boy, I've used a lot of them for household things. So what you would use those for with your dog is if there's something where you don't want to create more of an infection with your hands. So if you've got a pretty significant wound, sometimes even those puncture wounds from a stick, you might want to be wearing gloves for that. And if you're at all squeamish about touching blood and things, you might want gloves for that. You just don't know when you're going to need gloves. And certainly if there's a bigger, nastier wound, you may have to use your hand as a compress to hold it to keep the blood, to help stop the bleeding. So gloves are always a good choice to have, and you just don't know when you're going to use them, but when you need them, you need them. So I highly recommend putting a couple pairs of rubber gloves in your dog/human first aid kit. It's a good idea to have them around. You just don't know. And certainly working with horses, I've needed gloves often because I've had to stop bleeding with my hand while somebody was running to get vet wrap or some other things that I've suggested that you use, and I just have found those gloves to be invaluable. It's also useful if your horse or your dog or your kitty has some kind of really nasty wound to be able to get in there and really clean it. So gloves are useful. And one of the most obvious things that we've barely talked about at all, and it really is one of the first things you want to have in your first aid kit, is a thermometer. This is one of the new ones that actually gives you a number reading on a little printout, well, on a little window, but you can use any kind of thermometer. The ear thermometers for people don't really work well on dogs. Usually we suggest a rectal thermometer for an animal. Certainly if you have a horse, you want one that you can tie a long string on, because more than one horse has shifted away and the thermometer is in their buns and you cannot find it, and then you have a very serious medical emergency. So if you're using these on bigger animals, you definitely need to have a serious string tied on the end very securely. But for your average dog or cat, just a regular old rectal thermometer will be all you need. And you should definitely take your pet's temperature a few times to become familiar with what's normal for your pet. Their temperatures are higher than ours, and it varies between dogs, cats, and horses, so I won't go over that right now. But you should really know your pet's baseline temperature so that if there's a situation where his temperature is rising, you are well aware of when there's a situation. And that could be a sign of infection if your pet's had a wound and maybe it seemed minor. Some of those puncture wounds from sticks when they're running can seem minor. You feel like they're doing okay, but then 2 days later it looks really bad, and if they have a temperature, that's a sure sign that you need to get them to the vet immediately. So a thermometer is very useful. Another thing that a lot of people don't necessarily think about having in a pet first aid kit is some kind of syringe like this. This has a little cap on the end at the moment. Well, actually, it's part of it. So you can use this, or you can also get like a little mini turkey baster type thing. But you can use these if you have to crush up a pill like an antibiotic that your animal might not eat and he might be too sick to want to eat, so that you can squirt the food, the pill, smashed up maybe with something delicious like slurry dog food from a can or some meat mash to encourage your pet to eat their pills. These are very useful. I have somewhere in this house, and boy, if it was in my first aid kit, I'd have it, a little like mini turkey baster. And I had used it on my rabbit when one of my rabbits was sick. So I will definitely be keeping my eye out for another one. Sometimes they have them in like cute colors because you need them for little kids. And of course, there's a bigger kind of syringe like this that we often use with horses and for other things. So having one of these around is also useful. This one's sort of a medical grade one. It's a lot bigger, but if you're just doing a smashed up pill for your cat, you know, that thing's pretty huge. You might want one of these little fellas. And this one's good because it does have this rubbery tip on the end, which is good if you're feeding like a kitten that won't eat, or he lost his mom, because they can kind of chew on it. And if they bite it, it won't hurt them. And it's small enough that you can easily use this with a cat or a rabbit. One more thing that it doesn't seem like you need, but it's super useful if you have one, is one of these disposable stethoscopes. Now, it looks like a little kid's toy. Your children may pull it out of the box and play doctor with it. And these are disposable stethoscopes. They come in a bag like this. You can get them online. They're not too expensive. And it's pretty fun to play with your dog. But if you need to use it, particularly for a bigger dog that might be experiencing bloat, you can put this on them. And even though it looks like a kid's toy, you really can hear gut sounds with this. I can hear Tristan's heartbeat right now, actually. And they work well enough that you could, in fact, if you had a bit of a trained ear, detect things like pneumonia, congestion in the lungs. You could detect heart murmurs at different levels. So these disposable stethoscopes, and they come in other colors too. This happens to be yellow. They can be really useful. And why do you care about gut sounds in your dog? This is why. If you've got a dog that, let's say, hasn't eaten and hasn't pooped in 2 days and there's no gut sounds, that's a medical emergency. So you should be familiar with using the stethoscope on your dog and getting used to the sounds of digestion. I mean, you don't need a stethoscope to know that if your dog hasn't pooped in 2 days, he's got a clog and he really needs to be seen by someone. But the stethoscope can just confirm that if you live far away. I mean, I've got 15 vets within 5 miles of my house, so I don't really have a problem getting Tristan out there if he has a problem. But what looks like a fake stethoscope, which is a disposable one, is super useful to have for dogs with bloat in particular, or any animal that hasn't been eliminating, and so you have a potential situation where there's a clog going on in the intestinal tract. So that can be helpful. It's also, like I said, if your animal is unconscious and you're not very good at detecting a heartbeat or a pulse, this is a good thing to have for that. If your pet has seizures, sometimes people aren't sure if they're okay, so it's good for that. So it's not an essential thing to have in your pet first aid kit, but I highly recommend that you get one of these disposable stethoscopes and throw it in there just so that you've got it in case you need it. So that is the wrap up on the animal first aid kit that you should have in your house. A variety of natural pain relief things such as arnica, arnica cream, arnica pills, tea relief, formerly Tramiel, maybe some rescue remedy, and then we looked at things like different types of gauze and cotton and sterile cotton, and then we also looked at some ways to apply those things with vet wrap, tape, the gauze that you can just unroll and use that to stabilize some kind of packing over a wound, or if you need air to kind of still get to the wound and you don't want to wrap it up tightly. And then today we've just wrapped it up with some other equipment that you might need, such as gloves, a stethoscope, some kind of syringe, and certainly a thermometer. So I hope everyone's pet stays happy, healthy, and does not need a pet first aid kit. Yes, Trista, she likes your flower. This is a good flower. We searched hard, far and wide to get periwinkle, and he's not ashamed to wear it. And I must say, he still has a little bit of beach smell on him, but he's getting another massive bath when we come back from the beach after Labor Day. So he'll be really clean then. So thanks for joining us today for the wrap up on your pet first aid kit. And don't forget to put it in some kind of a big plastic Tupperware thing that you can buy from the dollar store or Walmart or someplace like that. And have it in some place where you can access it easily. Or if you have to stay with your pet while he's having a problem, you can easily tell even a 5-year-old, go under the bathroom sink and get that giant blue box, and they can find it and bring it to you. If you've really got a pet emergency and you are not thinking clearly, the easier it is to gather things up, the better. And sometimes it's just something like a cut in their pad. I mean, I keep finding glass in my backyard. There was some kind of a structure on this property years ago, and they knocked it down, and there's bits of glass everywhere. So, not that my dog's running over glass back there, and most of the dogs I'm working with are in the labyrinth for T-touch work, but you know, you just don't know when something like a little piece of glass in the street can cut your dog's paw, and a lot of blood can scare you, and you're going to be happy to have your rubber glove and some gauze and some vet wrap. So thanks for joining us today for this episode of Conversations with a Corgi. I am working with a dog now who's afraid of thunder, and we are supposed to have a terrible thunderstorm today, so I think I'll be over at her house for a while once it rains. In the meantime, I have so much to catch up on with our dog dancing videos. We're going to have a Facebook Live about that too soon, and it's really a fun thing that we're doing with dog dancing. And we have some weird emails from my job as an educator where we have to change passwords and codes, and it brings me right back into managed care, human care. Not my idea of a good time, but got to do it. They always threaten you with not being able to work if you don't do stuff like that. And I am doing, if anybody's in the area, Finn's mom is down in Connecticut. I'm doing a little T-touch workshop here next Saturday, 9 to 12, just to look at some of the basic T-touches and some strategies for different behavior issues we have with a couple of the dogs coming. You can bring a cat, rabbit, dog, nothing, yourself. So come to our T-touch workshop. Thanks for joining us. Everybody have a great day.